Last year, I fell victim to the skimmers, which Dave will talk about. I thought I was being smart by just going and getting cash all the time and not using my card at restaurants or gas stations and a local bank. I wiped out my whole checking account a couple days before Christmas. So, but everything went back and it was fine. It was the second time it happened, and I was like, I thought I was being safe, and just it can happen. So I spoke with my aunt on Friday in Florida, and she was a victim of identity theft with her tax returns. And from what I understand, Florida has a high volume of that happening there. So she called the IRS, did everything she's supposed to, ended up, they got her information in a medical center where she took her children. And so I guess it happened to a lot of people. She saw it in the paper. They ended up finding the person. So she got her money back in a timely manner. But usually if that doesn't happen, you sometimes have to wait a whole year to get your money back on your tax return. So that's why they say get them done as soon as possible. And we do have people here in the building that can help you with your tax returns if you haven't done so yet too. So, we're going to start with Dave since he has a PowerPoint. He'll talk about the ATM fraud and the skimmers. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of background on Dave. Okay. All right. So Dave Campbell is the Vice President of Corporate Security and Designated Security Officer for Dollar Bank, headquartered in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. As Vice President of Corporate Security, he is responsible for physical and electronic security, internal and external investigations, fraud and loss prevention, security training initiatives, and the management of fraud detection systems and analytical models. So prior to beginning his career with Dollar Bank in 2009, he worked as an executive team leader in assets protection with Target Corporation. In such capacity, he was responsible for the investigation of internal and external theft and fraud, shrink reduction strategies, the apprehension, interviewing, and subsequent criminal prosecution of retail theft offenders. Mr. Campbell is a certified fraud examiner through the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. He possesses dual Master of Science degrees in Homeland Security and Law and Public Policy from California University of Pennsylvania, a post-baccalaureate certificate in Forensic Science and Law from Duquesne University, the Cyril H. Wett Institute of Forensic Science and Law, and both a Bachelor of Science and Associate of Science degree in Criminal Justice. Mr. Campbell lives in a suburb of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with his wife and 2 daughters. Please help me welcome Dave Campbell.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
First, I want to take a minute to thank you for attending tonight and thank those individuals that are viewing remotely as well. Lauren asked me today to come here and talk a little bit about skimming and how it works. She said that there's been a couple people that she knows of that have had some unauthorized activity on their cards through skimming technology, and she asked kind of for me to come out and give a high-level overview of how that works. To get started, I want to make sure there's no misconception. A little disclaimer here: the views, statements, and information expressed in the following slides and throughout this presentation reflect the current opinions of the presenter and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of his employer. All information and opinions expressed or implied are intended for general informational purposes only and are subject to change without notice. Furthermore, the slides and the contents of the presentation are not legal advice or any other service for which professional advice should be sought. Well, we got that out of the way. Skimming, how big of a deal is it? So when I got contacted from the FBI and Lauren asking me to be here this evening, I Googled it. I Googled skimming, just to pull the top 10 kind of media highlights that I got when I talked about skimming. So here you are: credit card skimming in Waynesboro, credit card skimming devices found in supermarkets, card skimming found in Minnesota. You name it, this is occurring. So people say, how does it happen? You know, am I to blame? I had unauthorized activity on my account. What could I have done to prevent it? So what is card skimming? To prevent it, you kind of have to understand what it is and how it occurs, right? So card skimming is a method utilized by criminals, and all they're looking to do is steal the magnetic stripe information off the back of your card. So most commonly a credit card, debit card, whatever form of payment you use, they try stealing that information, creating a counterfeit card or using it in what we call e-commerce, like online shopping, and using your information for financial gain. Skimming devices come in every shape and size. We're going to show you some photos of different ones. It can be anything from handheld skimmers to ATM skimmers to gas pump skimmers, POS, what we call point of sale. You'll hear POS a good bit when you go to a merchant or a store and you're using your card there. In technology, we're going to talk a little bit about it. Technology over the past few years continues to add to that dynamic and the complexity of card skimming. So skimmer technology. This is even a slide that's probably a few years old now. Skimmer technology, when you look at it from the past. So in the upper left-hand corner here, you'll see kind of an old school skimmer when you talk about AA batteries, the type of memory, what that equates to. You know, that equals about 200 swipes. And then to download that information, it was an Ethernet connection, right? So you had to pull all that information right from that skimmer. A little bit newer technology, and this is even a little outdated. You're talking lithium batteries. So if you notice the size of a handheld skimmer now, it's becoming a lot smaller, right? So a lot easier for individuals to conceal it on them and use it maybe without even your knowledge. You look at the amount of swipes that can go through it. So the difference between 200 and 60,000 obviously is a lot. So when you talk about the number of cards and the number of people that you can compromise, it's totally up there from the past few years. And then you look at the type of technology. When you look at Bluetooth technology and the abilities for criminals now to leave skimmers at a location and not have to worry about the risk of going back there. You know, if the skimmer was identified and we work with law enforcement, we give them the heads up and they actually do a stakeout and wait for these individuals, they don't have to worry about that risk because they can get the information right through Bluetooth technology and leave that skimmer at the scene and not even go back and get it if they didn't want to. So when you hear about track data on a payment card, what do you think of? A lot of people say, I don't understand what's on the back of a card on that mag stripe card and how people actually pull that information. So when you look at a kind of an industry standard formatting of track 1, track 2, we'll keep it high level. There is track 3, but we won't get into that. You look at kind of the outlook and the layout of a card, right? So they're all going to be the same, and it gives you the layout here, what's included on that information. You have anything from your card number to your name, to your expiration date, some service codes, and some different technology that's embedded in that card. It's important for you to understand, you know, what's on it, for you to understand how it gets compromised and how the criminals actually charge unauthorized activity on your card. So card skimmer types, how does it work? That's always the question that gets asked when an individual has unauthorized activity on their card. How did the criminals get my money? How did they take it? So when we talk about the different kind of skimmers, again, we'll mention handheld ATM, POS, again, point of sale, and gas pump. So you're probably familiar with these type of readers as you go out in the stores and you swipe your cards to buy information. So we're going to talk about how does it work. So to start, you need the card reader, right? So here's an ATM, and this would be the legitimate card reader that when you go to an ATM, you stick your debit card in here, and then you would go down here and you'd fill the prompts out and your PIN, and then you would do a withdrawal. So what the criminals do is they get a fabricated keypad reader, card reader, and they put it over, they adhere it to the actual ATM. So when you go to do a withdrawal, you actually stick your card through their skimmer technology. It reads all the information off the back of your card. And your card still actually goes into the actual ATM. So you're going to complete your transaction in the exact same manner than you would if the skimmer wasn't on it. So if you don't know what you're looking for, which can be very hard, because today what the criminals do is they look at the different makes and models of the ATMs out there, and they actually get card readers to look identical to what they should look like on the ATMs. So exactly. So whether they use an adhesive, they'll stick it right over top, just like that individual's doing right there. They'd stick right over top, and then your card, you would actually put it directly right through the skimmer, and it would still go right into the ATM. And when you're done with your transaction, it would come right back out through the ATM, back through the skimmer. And they have all your track data. There are security procedures that we have in place. We don't talk in detail about what they are for the fact that we obviously don't want criminals to know. But we're very aware of it, and we do take steps to make sure that we check them. So aside from the card reader, after it goes through the skimmer technology, they have your mag stripe information on the back. But to do an ATM withdrawal, they need a PIN, right? They haven't compromised your PIN at this point. So how do they compromise it? So we talk about PIN capturing, right? So if you walk up to an ATM, criminals are some of the most creative individuals that are out there, right? So anywhere that they can hide a pinless camera, right? Something that they can watch you, that they can match up when they get your mag stripe information. They watch you put in your pin, and they're sitting there and they watch the digit of how many digits, what digits you actually put in, and then they match them up. When they create their counterfeit cards to use them through an ATM, they match up the mag stripe information on the card, and they now know your pin. So when you look up in an ATM, you might walk up, they might have brochures in an ATM with them. You might not think anything of it. You go through, you do your transaction, you walk away, and at any given time after that, you can see unauthorized charges show up on your bank statement. There's different strategies to it. So you could see it very close after when it happens. You might not see it for 30 days. And the reason being is the criminals want to make it as hard as possible for law enforcement and investigators to determine where they actually compromised the cards from. So if they did it the exact same way every time, it would be pretty easy for us to determine when they were compromised. And then, as they deploy different strategies, it makes it hard from a surveillance review perspective, trying to find out who actually did it and identify those individuals. Here's another example as well. Pop out a top layer of the ATM, connect a little bit of a phone and cameras up in here, and some different battery power and everything else so that they can actually watch in this ATM you put your PIN in. Here's another example. So what they do is they actually create fabrications to ATMs. You can see the little hole right there and the little hole right there. And what that is that's the actual camera that's sitting there as you put your card in through the card reader, the skimmer, and then I sit here and I put my PIN in, whatever that might be. They're sitting there recording it, and they can tell exactly what my PIN is when I enter it. So if you're like me, I'm smarter than criminals, right? You walk up to an ATM and you cover it as you put in your PIN, so that if they are watching by means of a camera, it'd be difficult for them to determine what your PIN is. So I'm smarter than the criminals, right? Maybe. So PIN capturing, keypad overlay, right? So aside from the actual pinhole cameras that they use to watch you, sometimes they won't deploy a camera, they'll deploy a keypad overlay. So even if I'm covering it thinking they're recording me from a camera, they sit here and all it is it's a complete replica of the keypad you would see on the ATM. They put it over top, and when I actually hit in my PIN, I'm pushing it on a keypad sensitive device that they know exactly what my PIN is. So it doesn't matter if I cover it or I pretend to hit numbers that aren't actually my PIN to try distracting them. They know, based on the pressure sensitive keys, exactly what PIN I'm putting in. And then they match it up with the mag stripe data. So after they have that information, what happens? When we go back and we say, hey, even if they use a camera here and they don't get my PIN, just because they don't get my PIN doesn't mean that they can't use the card through card-present non-PIN transactions. So maybe they can't use it in an ATM to withdraw cash, but they could go to a merchant and buy goods that they might be able to sell on the black market very easily, or return for cash depending on what the merchant's return policy is. So whatever way, it all comes down to money. Whatever way they can get money from their deed, they will try to do. So here's a photo that came out from the NYPD that was published out. After they compromise your information, this is what they do. They create counterfeit cards or with the compromised data that they get. So in this photo, you see anything from the skimmers, the card readers that were manufactured to counterfeit cards, whether there's information on them or not yet, but that's what they are going to use them for. And then you have driver's license information. Here's a booklet here that you can purchase to determine security features in identification for states. The criminal actually had one so that they knew exactly what the security features were, and they can try compromising them. And then they have everything from embossing machines. If you ever go to a merchant and they say, can you read me after you do your transaction, can you read me the last 4 digits on your card? Back in the day, criminals would just compromise the card on the mag stripe. They wouldn't have anything on the front of the card. So the merchant would use that. So when they asked you that, you had no idea what it was because there's no information on the front. What the criminals did is they started embossing the numbers on the front. So when you would ask them that, they knew exactly what the credit card number was because they already had it off the mag stripe card.
Isn't the chip card supposed to do a lot with this to eliminate it?
So it's not going to eliminate it. If you look internationally with EMV and when they rolled it out, there's a difference between card present and card not present transactions. So card presents, obviously you have your card in your possession, you go out to a store and you use your card to use that transaction, opposed to when you go online and say I order something from a merchant online and have it shipped to my location. So the EMV technology and the chip technology is expected to reduce fraud on card present transactions, keeping people from actually having the physical copy of the card. But when you look at card not present transactions, don't be surprised if you get a chip card, an EMV card, and you still see unauthorized activity on your account. It can happen, so don't be shocked if you do get that card and you do have unauthorized activity. It's still probably going to occur, hopefully to none of you, but it will still be prevalent out there. So after they create the counterfeit card, again, it's all about money. So how are they going to use your data? Is it going to be through ATM withdrawals, POS transactions, sales on the street or underground, or e-commerce? Whatever way, depending on the information they have and how they're comfortable using it, that's how they'll deploy their strategy. Gas pump skimming, the exact same concept as ATM, just a little different avenue. So when you look at gas pump skimming, different photos in here. There's some photos that I pulled offline that here's a card reader for a gas pump that you could order, totally legitimate, that you could actually put into a gas pump. What criminals will do is they'll add Bluetooth technology so that when they skim the card through it, they'll replace that card reader, and then again, it's storing your information, they're pulling it, they're able to see it remotely. When you look at Bluetooth technology, they'll say, well, they have to be within a close range to pull that information. You know, how far is it? There's arguments to that. There's even booster technology out there now when they talk about expanding that signal. If you Google, you can read some articles on that. But again, skimming technology, if you don't know what you're looking for, they can put the Bluetooth skimmer or any kind of skimmer on the inside of the gas pump. If you read any articles or saw the news probably a few years ago now, a lot of gas stations were having the exact same key used. So the criminals were getting a hold of that key. They were able to buy it through whatever means on the internet. They would buy that key, take it around, they'd be able to open the gas pump actually up, connect the skimmer devices on the inside of the pump, close it back up, lock it up, and you go to pump gas, and you're none the wiser that anything is even wrong with the pump. Your transaction is still read, goes through the skimmer, bypasses right through to the processor, and they have your information. And again, unauthorized activity shows up on your account, and you say, how did I let this happen? You didn't. Nobody would understand, where that occurred or how that occurred on them. So POS skimming, point of sale. Here's another example of a skimmer. You might recognize this as a real thing, a real type of POS point of sale terminal. So here's just an overlay, a skimmer top that they lay over top, that when you go and you actually swipe your card through, another avenue that they can compromise your information as well. Handheld skimming. I feel bad for the waiter or waitress because it's always the example that they give when they talk about handheld skimmers when you go to a restaurant. But how many times when you go out to eat and you want to pay by a payment card, a credit card, debit card, you hand the waiter or the waitress a card and they walk away with it. You don't see what they do with it, right? So it's big exposure. That's always the perfect example they give with a handheld skimmer. Whether criminals get a job for that purpose, whether they recruit individuals like that, anyone that might have your card, when they walk away, they could swipe it through their handheld skimmer and then take it back and charge it for your bill.
I had mine stolen a bunch of years ago down in Market Square. It was actually, they said the mafia used the busboys, because the busboys were making less money than the food servers were. And they're the ones, he said, they put the skimmer on their belt, so whenever they'd go by the bus station, whenever the server would skim the card for the meal, set the thing there, go take care, so that the bus boys would go by, grab, skim, put it right back.
Like I said, any way they can make money or they can compromise your information, they'll try doing it. So test time. What is the difference? We talk about skimmers, right? What is the difference between these two pictures? Both ATMs. Can you identify what's different about this photo compared to that photo? Okay, very good. So when we talk about the card reader, see the difference here between the card reader and that card reader? Anything else? When we talk about, what's that? I think it's just the zoom of the picture. That might be my fault when I put it offline. Go ahead, direct me. Okay, right here? Okay. And again, I think it's just a zoom. Here, so here's the difference right here. So you notice this little attachment onto the ATM? When we talked about cameras, that's what they did. So they put the skimmer over top the reader. And again, if you don't use the ATM enough, you wouldn't know what it should look like. So you come up, you might not even think anything different about it, and you might not even notice the little attachment on the ATM. So again, there's the card reader that will compromise your striped data on the back of your card, and then there's the camera that would let you type in your PIN.
So the average person, if you're getting cash out of a machine like that, you're better off probably at a bank machine than some local place ATM?
It can happen anywhere. Again, we'll talk about some things you might be able to do, but I'm not going to sit here and make you believe that you're safer doing it one way than another. Again, skimmers can go on in any shape and form. What I recommend asking yourself, hey, would I feel comfortable using this machine? How many people are around? What kind of lighting is there? But it doesn't matter. I mean, these individuals are brazen enough that if they walk up, it's quick enough for them to do. They could walk up in a crowd of people and put it together. So, and you have to understand from a criminal perspective, they're looking at the most information they can compromise. So they might not want to go to a remote location where they think they might only get 1 or 2 people in a night or on a weekend. They want to go to those populated areas so they can get as many compromised credentials that they can from the card. So here's some information I actually found. I got emailed on. It said in 2015, more than 700 million data records were stolen by hackers and nearly 1,700 data breaches. Well, when I got this email, I actually looked up the U.S. population at that time, and you're talking 323 million. So when you talk about 700 million data records compared to the U.S. population, you don't know whether your information's out there or not. Arguably, if you look at the difference, there's some portion of your data that may be out there. So how can I protect myself? I hear this from family, from friends, from colleagues. It's very personal when you know it's out there, but it happens to you, right? So you're on online banking, you get your statement, you look at your bank information, and you go, whoa, I didn't do any of these transactions, right? It becomes very personal when you get your data compromised. So what can you do? How can you protect yourself? Some general, very basic security features can kind of help you protect yourself against skimming. Keep your eyes open. That's an obvious. A lot of times in today's day and age, we get so busy that we want to go from point A to point B and we don't notice anything unusual around us. A lot of people think when they leave, I'm texting, I'm looking at my phone. Keep your eyes open. What's going on around you? Do you notice anything that's unusual? Do you notice a car that's been somewhere everywhere you go, or a car when you walk in that's been there an unusual amount of time compared to where you're at? Pay attention to your bank accounts often. I'd recommend that you keep tabs on your bank account more than simply the 30-day statement period. A lot of the banks now, they have notifications that you can set up, whether you get emails, whether you get text messages. I do recommend that because of how quick this can happen. When Lauren told her story, it's right before the holidays, and she had her account kind of drained from all of her money. It really creates an inconvenience whenever you're counting on that money to pay bills. Maybe you wrote a check out, and then you start having problems down the road until everything gets resolved. So it's an inconvenience, but pay attention. The sooner you can stop it when it starts occurring on you, the better off you'll be. So cover and multiply those keys. Maybe it's a camera, not an overlay. I always recommend too, with anything, if you have a garage door opener when you go to your house and you're typing in your keys, you don't know who's looking over your shoulder, who's watching you. Cover those keys up. Make sure that it's not evident when you're using one finger what numbers you're hitting in, whether it's your alarm system in your house, garage door opener, ATM, wherever you're putting your PIN in. Again, be observant. Who might be watching? Who might be paying attention? Educate yourself, which you're doing a very good job by being here. Again, we appreciate you being here. Educate yourself. Stay involved, but use caution. There's a lot of information out there that can be misleading or pry on you emotionally. If you hear something, what I recommend, I always say, don't read one book, read all the books. So even if you hear something out there, before you believe it to be true, look into it a little bit, right? So you'll look, whether you look at a news story or you look at information that maybe a friend sent you. If it's going to make you form an opinion, I always say do more research on it. Okay, make sure it's accurate before you start doing things that might not be entirely true. Not all TMs, POS terminals, or gas pumps are equal. I was at a gas station in another state the one time, and I went in, and they actually had their surveillance video posted, right, as a deterrent camera so that people knew that you were on camera. Well, as I'm looking around at all the gas pumps that they had on video, I noticed one of the gas pumps were not covered by surveillance video, right? So not all POS or gas pumps are created equal. If I'm a criminal, guess what? I walked in there and I noticed that as well. So guess what gas pump I might be more readily available to go out and put a skimmer on because I know that I'm not being seen on surveillance video. So again, pay attention, be observant. Keep in mind that as well. Trust your instinct. The one thing I always say, whether it's to employees of the bank, the one thing that can't fool you is that little voice in the back of your throat that says, you know what, something's not right. And it's amazing how many times something will happen to somebody and they go, you know what, I knew something wasn't right. I knew something was off. Trust that voice, all right? Make sure that you are protecting yourself. The last thing we talk about here, stay safe, protect yourself. At the end of the day, for the most part, there's some different variables that go into play. But if you have unauthorized activity on your account, as long as you're paying attention to it and you call your bank and you let them know, you're protected. So keep that in mind. If you ever notice that there's a skimmer somewhere and you think you identified one, be careful removing it, taking it, because if those individuals are still around the area and they're watching you, you don't know what they possibly could do. If you ever identify anything like that, I recommend all the time call your local law enforcement. They're very well prepared for it. They know exactly what to do, and they do have contacts that if they're not prepared, they can call somebody that would know what to do.
Are we better off when you make a charge, you have a choice on your debit card, you charge it as a credit card or a debit card? Do you have more protections when you run it as a credit, or do you have?
It's all kind of in preference. I mean, basically, depending on what you pick, you're either going to be prompted to put a PIN in or not. Again, when criminals compromise information, they're going to take whatever information they compromise and they're going to make it work in that manner. So if they don't get your PIN, they might not be able to do an ATM withdrawal to get cash out that way. But that doesn't mean that they can't counterfeit your card, go use it, just in a different form. So whether you lose $500 in cash or you lose $500 because they bought a television in a retailer, for your perspective, it's going to be $500 regardless, and then work to get that money back. So there's different strategies on it. People always say, you know, I'd rather use credit than debit because the money doesn't come right out of my account. But then there's other people that say I don't want to use credit because I want to control more of what I'm spending and where it's coming from. So I'm not going to stand up here and tell you which one's better because it depends on who you are as an individual and what kind of fits best into your personal circumstances.
Dave, just so we know, I have a microphone so other people can hear. If we can raise our hands, and I can bring the microphone to you so they can hear. But I do have a question on the chips. If you could touch on those a little bit and how they are protecting us now. I know not every bank's doing it yet, but most of them are moving to that point. And I know certain, when you go to certain stores, they have the chip option now. So if you can just touch on that a little bit.
So when we talk about chip cards or EMV technology, it's basically a microchip in the card now, and you'll notice the difference if you have an EMV capable card where instead of swiping the card, they call it dip the chip, where you actually put it in, you have to leave it in there until you do the transaction. There's some liability shifts that went on in October. Some industries kind of get an extended period of time, but the way that's protecting you more from a card present perspective is that microchips formulating, for global reasons to understand it, it's basically formulating a code when you put that card in. So if I would compromise that card at that given moment, I'm not compromising the chip. So the next time you do that transaction, that number would be different, right? So if I tried using that transaction, it's already been used. So if I compromise your data, I wouldn't be able to use it from a card present perspective. But when we talk about card present and card not present, I can still compromise the information on the mag stripe of the back of the card. So again, I could still do transactions from a card not present perspective, which is probably when you look at the internationally when they're using the EMV technology, that's kind of where we expect the shift to come from. We expect a decrease in the fraud in card present and an increase from a card not present perspective. And that's the end of the presentation. I can open it up. I want to thank everybody again for attending and those individuals watching remotely. And any questions you might have, I'd be happy to answer.
These people that hack all this stuff, are they individuals, groups, or companies even?
Both.
All?
Yeah, I mean, all of the above. You're dealing with many different groups, many different criminals. I wish it was only one group or one criminal that's kind of taking part in it, but that adds to the complexity of the investigation and trying to identify these individuals. You're dealing with people, again, it all comes down to money. So as much as they can get money from it and they get a financial benefit from it, you're always going to have people that continue to take part in that too.
This technology is fairly sophisticated. Where are they getting this built?
I mean, arguably, it's not that sophisticated. Obviously, technology and the ability and the cost, they can get it manufactured anywhere. I mean, anybody that knows a little bit about technology, it's amazing that it's not that complicated to do. It takes some imagination, some detail, some organization. But once they have it, again, they look at the ATM, they look at to what we call a target, and then they manufacture something that's going to look identical to it. So that even if you know what you're looking for, it's very tough to identify it sometimes without, pulling on the card reader or looking at the type of.
In regard to e-commerce, when I go online and I'll purchase something, and they tell me it's protected by, say, for instance, on eBay or Amazon, that it's protected by how secure and how protected is it? They give you this thing that it's, protected.
I mean, I can't sit here and tell you it is or it isn't. Again, it gets back to the perspective of you have to look at your own technology and your own equipment and how you're connecting to the internet. When you connect out to the internet, you're exposed. So there's other companies and everything that use that obviously are very good from a security perspective, and they make sure their end of it is secure to what they believe is secure. But when we look years ago, if we ever thought about merchant data breaches or the type of technology years ago, there are people out there saying, no, that's crazy, right? That couldn't happen. So I'm a firm believer. I'm one of those individuals that when things happen, okay, what's next? What is coming? What are the criminals going to come out with that we need to make sure that we're either one ready for, that we can mitigate, or how do we stay ahead of that? What can we perceive to happen down the road that we make sure we're doing the best to protect individuals in the community?
What percentage of hackers are being apprehended? And what are the results of them when they are convicted?
I'll defer that. There's another professional coming in from the FBI. I think he's actually probably more prepared to answer that question. Law enforcement does a fantastic job. We work with them all the time. There's so much of this that goes on that they apprehend people all the time. But they run into their own hardships and some complexities that happen. But I would challenge you to ask the next presenter on that.
Is this a slap on the back of the hand and $15 fine or something else like that, and then they go back and do the same thing, or are they put in jail where they?
It comes down to perception. I mean, there's a lot of people that go to jail for that type of activity. I'm not an expert on federal sentencing guidelines. I'm not going to stand here and act that I am. But yeah, there's different ranges, obviously, that go into it and different variables. But that individual from the FBI would probably have a lot better idea.
What percentage of people do you catch as hackers? I mean, you and your...
It's tough to quantify, but I'll tell you that every time, from a high-level perspective, we monitor any fraud that comes into the bank from a cardholder perspective. So if you call the bank and you say, hey, there was unauthorized activity on our account, or we identify it, we call you and say, can you verify that this is you or not, and you say, no, it wasn't. We'll take your information and we start matching it up against other cardholders throughout the bank, and we start trying to identify what the common point of purchase or compromise is. And then we work with law enforcement closely to try to identify the individuals that compromise the information, compromise the data, and let them run with it as well so that we can try apprehending and prosecuting those individuals. It is hard, to your question though, it is hard to quantify the overall percentage of people that get caught because of, you don't know if one individual is responsible for compromising one card compared to 100 cards, whatever it might be.
What responsibility do I have if I'm hacked? From a bank standpoint, you represent a bank, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. What am I involved in? What am I?
There's different variables, but for the most part, if you ever have transactions, that's why I said pay attention to your account often. If you pay attention to it and you call your bank and say, hey, I recognize there's unauthorized activity on it, for the most part, there's other variables that kind of go into play that wouldn't make this 100% true, but you're not liable for those transactions. We'll take the risk on. We'll reimburse you your money, like Lauren talked about earlier. Sometimes it does take some time. We do it as quickly as possible to identify, obviously, that you're a victim and give you your money back.
Does it make any difference whether it's a credit card or a debit card?
There's some different rules that go into play, depending on if you're a retail, your business, and so forth, different regulations that all come into play. So again, for the most part, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it does. It's hard for me to kind of stand up here and talk about every specific variable that can occur.
Thank you.
Which is why I always say if you ever identify, pay attention, to your bank statements. If you ever identify any kind of unauthorized activity, the most important thing to do is call your bank right away.
If you're traveling a lot and you end up, which we did when we went out of the country, called the bank and said, we're going to be in Switzerland or wherever it happens to be, so I expect to use the credit card there. Is that advantageous for the user as well as the bank or the credit card company?
There's strategies for both. So we always say if you plan on traveling, let us know. But understand that just because you state that you're traveling, a lot of times what criminals will do is they can recognize you as a tourist, right? So they might identify that, hey, this individual called the bank and said they'd be traveling in this country. So I'm going to compromise your information while you're there, and I'm going to use it from a fraud analytic model. You identified and you told me as a bank that you're going to be traveling there, right? So in theory, I should let you use your card there no matter what, whatever you want to use it for. But the problem is if you get compromised while you're there, I want to continue to make sure I'm protecting you and your money so that they don't use up on a credit, your credit line on a credit card or take all your money from a debit perspective, and then you're stuck because you're getting declined because you have no money. So a lot of people say, hey, what should I do? Should I notify the bank, not notify the bank? I always recommend notifying the bank or talk to your bank and ask them what their expectations are of you as a cardholder.
What is point law? You know, these companies that say they protect you, is that good for a consumer to purchase those?
Again, I can't stand up here and give you legal advice. I will tell you that nothing is 100% foolproof. And if you read a lot of the commercials that come on, if you read the fine print at the bottom, it'll tell you that nothing's foolproof in it. Anything helps, but I won't get into whether I think that's truly valuable to do all the time or not to do. You know, anytime that you're paying attention to your credit report, you're entitled to a free credit report yearly from the three credit bureaus. So I recommend always paying attention to your credit bureau, especially if you're at a stage in your life where you think you might not ever look for credit again. A lot of times criminals will target that generation knowing that you're probably not paying attention to your credit report or you have no need to be buying a house or a car recently. The young and the old is usually very impacted because they feel that those individuals won't be looking at their credit. But that doesn't mean that anybody growing up looking for a house or whatever, that they're not victims as well. So at the end of the day, to answer your question, I know that kind of went around it a little bit.
I used to sell that, so that's
Okay.
why I asked.
Right. I know people that have had great success with it. I know people that have still had issues with different type of services that are offered.
Well, you have to submit your information. I always thought that was kind of, you know, even though I sold that information, I sold the product to the person, I mean, I'm giving them, they're giving me their information, so, you know, I could be involved too.
And that's why when a lot of times when people have stuff compromised, they go, I know exactly where it came from. And I would caution that because the criminals, that's what they want to try making it look like when they deploy different strategies. They don't make it that easy to know exactly where your information was compromised. And in today's day and age, you might have been compromised in 3 different avenues, and there's no way, or it's very difficult at times to determine which avenue actually yielded or resulted the unauthorized activity on your accounts.
I just have a remark. The other day I called the IRS and I made sure that I got her number or whatever it was that she identified herself with. So if there was an issue, I can go back to that. And I kind of, if I'm giving out that kind of information, I'll try to get some information back from them before I leave it. So that helps.
One of the other things that you know, a lot of the credit card companies, they have where you could put a limit on, and they would notify you if you had any charges. And, you know, any charges that exceeded that amount for your approval.
Yeah. And there's different, all that different type of customer service aspect is trying to be deployed to try helping you out as cardholders and try mitigating risk to the bank as well. And again, if you, what works good for one individual doesn't work good for another. So it's kind of, we sit back and we look from a strategy approach, how can we make every individual happy while protecting what we think is in their best interest as well as the best interest of the bank as well. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave. Okay. Yeah, we'll take a couple-minute break. Thank you. Okay, so we'll get started with our next speaker. He's a representative from the FBI. His name's Patrick Howley. So I'll tell you a little bit about him. We'll talk about identity theft and cybercrime, so he can answer your questions on those topics. Okay. So Patrick J. Howley, Special Agent, Pittsburgh Division, Mon Valley Resident Agency. Patrick has been with the FBI for 19 years. He is currently assigned to primarily work on crimes against children, but also works on any violent and white-collar crimes in an assigned territory. He is trained to perform basic digital extraction for computer forensics, is a graduate from the University of Michigan with degrees in accounting and finance, and a former certified public accountant in the state of Michigan. Please help me welcome Patrick Howley.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you very much. I know there were questions or issues kind of rolling over from the Dollar Bank presentation on the skimming. I can try. I will tell you that as he's talking, I'm Googling outside and trying to get some answers for you. So I appreciate being here. I really give you a lot of credit, kudos, for trying to stay on top of what obviously is something we hear about very often. We in the government are not immune to it because of the OPM breach. So we kind of dealing with things on our own as these things occur. I will try to, if you have questions, I know we have a microphone to try to help the people not present. So we'll try to get to the mic, or if I don't remember, remind me to repeat the question so that we know what it is that I'm answering. I handed out a booklet before I get started. This booklet, which is put out by the Federal Trade Commission, Taking Charge, is all about the identity theft. You don't need me here to talk about identity theft if you have this booklet, because it answers and has samples and will prepare you on the when this occurs. It's not a matter of if it's going to occur. It will hit your family, if not you, in one way, shape, or form. But the information's phenomenal. There is additional information at the Federal Trade Commission website, ftc.gov, G-O-V. If you go there, and all this material is free. If you have, before Christmas when I gave this talk, I was telling people to order it as stocking stuffers. I love this book. It's free to get. The shipping is free. Apparently, people took me up on it because when Lauren went to order some, they were out. So, but I brought extra. If you've got family, you got anybody you want to take a book home to, I have plenty to go around. There's some additional information come up afterwards. There's what to do for children, what to do when it occurs in terms of a bookmark, just little things that they have. They have it in different languages, etc. So getting to the purpose of being here on the identity theft side. Identity theft is all about your personal identifying information, your PII, which essentially is name, date of birth, social security number, and maybe a few extra pieces, driver's license or otherwise. That is what you need to safeguard the most, and it's what the bad guys, as we truly do refer to them as, are trying to get their hands on to profit from. It is all about the money. That's the only reason this is going on, which is different than the OPM breach, where all the federal government employees' information was taken. And I say that just to differentiate. Our information was compromised not for financial gain by Anonymous or some hacking group. It was a very political government-to-government kind of event, foreign government against the U.S. They now have packages of information to make it very easy to try to recruit, as foreign intelligence officers will try, to get assets from the U.S. or in the U.S. to compromise information. That's what that was principally about. Part of the reason we know that is take this compared to what we've seen in the news, and you saw some of the information in the presentation about compromises in the retail side. When Target, I think, was one of the entities breached, and several others, but when that occurred, there are different parts of the internet. There's the internet we all know, www.dollarbank, or there's the dark net, or things that go on where it's a much different side of the internet, still communicates over the same wires, etc. But it's very specific in terms of finding the address, and it's not going to be a www.entity.com. They often have, like on the Tor, the onion router, it's an anonymizer, and they have very odd websites that use the .tor extension, where the Silk Road that you probably heard about in the news, where they were dealing in weapons, drugs, all sorts of contraband, was all occurring on the internet in its own e-commerce, separate from what you would do at Walmart.com. When the retail breach occurred, there was a huge spike in the dark side of the internet, the dark net, where they were selling credit card numbers. You immediately saw a corresponding, you knew what it was about. It was about the money, it was about selling the credit card information. The OPM breach occurs, nothing. Nothing to this day. It was all about another entity getting it to try to target us. So, as you're concerned, we're going to concentrate on the retail side. So what are some examples of the traditional identity theft? As they covered on the credit card, that's going to be the most common because it's all about the money, all right? You have other instances, aside from credit cards, you're going to have people trying to get new credit from you. If you lose your wallet, old school, someone could steal your identity. Not only are they getting the money that's in the wallet, they're going to get the information on your credit cards and may use your credit cards for a short period of time. Employment. Sometimes people will use your identity to get a job somewhere else, maybe because they need benefits for a short period of time, believe it or not. That can roll over. Now, it's not common, but it is still out there. What's interesting there is with the way medical records can be going, if someone assumes your identity and gets medical insurance in your name or benefits in your name and goes and gets treatment for something, you run the possibility of tainting your medical file with somebody else's medical file. You can confuse blood types, you can confuse allergies, it is a real threat. Something to be, not that you have control. I'll get into that also, but I mean, it's just a form of identity theft. Anybody here receive a call from the IRS? It's going to happen. We get them at the office. We get them. Well, we play along. Who do I need to send the money to? Where's it supposed to go? And it's surprising how much information they may have about you already. It's what they're doing.
Should we then play along?
No,
Yeah,
no.
okay.
We're the best thing when and the question was should you play along? No. And I'm not saying leave it to the professionals, because we shouldn't be playing along either, because all we're going to do is irritate them, okay? What we tell people, the most important thing is when you get those calls, you know it's a scam. You do, okay? The IRS never calls. They're going to send you a letter. They never ask you to send money, especially via Green Dot, Western Union, MoneyGram, or otherwise, okay? Just not going to happen. And they're not going to have you pay, or we're going to come and arrest you. That's not going to happen either, okay? If the IRS is going to come and arrest you, you know well in advance that they've been looking at you, okay?
My sister had that happen in North Carolina. And they have called and called and called and called, and each time it got more threatening.
Well, it will. You just got to hang up. Even employ, if someone keeps calling back, even employ the air horn.
Just
Sure.
one thing with the IRS, when you speak with them, they always say Ms. Jones Smith or something, and they will always give you a badge number. So if you don't hear those things in rapid succession, there's smell of rat.
However, they too can mimic that in terms of trying to present information. Even if they give you a callback number, call a main line if you want to. It's not going to be. The number they give you is probably going to go back to them.
Yeah.
It just doesn't matter. You know, you can call, well, part of the playing around that we do, we'll call several days later. We'll call and give them another name of someone who supposedly contacted us. They will acclimate just because they got you on the phone. So again, it's not worth it. You're not going to have that much fun relative to the pain that it's going to cause you. So how is someone's ID stolen? And I kind of messed up a little bit when I mentioned the lost wallet being an old way. One of the other older methods, shall I say, that I'm truly hoping that people don't do anymore, but it's an old habit to break, is putting your mail in your mailbox and raising the red flag. That red flag being raised is a whole nother meaning these days. You're letting the bad guy know that you've got mail in here to pick up, which is most likely going to be a check in there. And they can take it, they can wash it, they can get your account information, they can cash it for more money than you realize. You're compromising your bank account information. It's a very easy thing to do, and with all the mailboxes or post office that are easy enough to get to, I truly ask people to stop with the mailbox, take the stuff to the post office, take it to a mailbox. On the internet, a lot of things occurring on the internet. Email phishing, phishing being with the PH, not an F, is where you're going to receive something that mimics a true site, but it's not. It may look like your bank sent you an email and they're asking you to verify your security information. That will never happen, legitimately. Your bank will never ask you to verify passwords. It's not going to ask you to verify information, especially via an email, which is different than if you call your bank or you're initiating the call and they ask for you to verify certain things. You know they need to know that they're talking to the right person. You need to know your social security number. You may even have to know a code word. You may have to give additional so that they know who they're talking to. If you receive a call, always be guarded. As the gentleman said before, David, listen to that voice in the back of your head or the hair that's standing up on the back of your neck. Don't be very guarded about answering questions on incoming requests. It's different if you initiate. Be very guarded about anything that comes in. I rarely, just as a passing anecdote. So my daughter in college, she's having trouble with her computer. We have a warranty. I had asked her to just call the number, we ship the computer off, they repair it in a couple days, send it back. Somehow she ended up on the line with what was said to be Sony. May or may not have been. But she called them, and they started asking a bunch of questions. She gave them permission to get online with her, and now they're kind of ghosting. They're being able to manipulate her computer to try to figure out what the problem is. And then they say, we see what it is. It's not hardware, it's your software. And then they want to do something else. She kind of gets confused. And somehow they get my phone number, which is okay. She wanted them to give me a call. They got disconnected. Instead of them calling my daughter back, for whatever reason, they end up calling me. So I'm talking to them on the phone. She says she has control of my daughter's computer. She's trying to figure out. She wants to sell a warranty or a fix to the problem. I said, I already have warranty. Why are you? And then I realized, who are you with? Well, you're not even my warranty company. So why are we talking to you? Well, your daughter has. I have to call my daughter. Get off the phone, tell her to just shut the computer off. Just disconnect the. And it's, even though she initiated it, my point being is, when she allowed them access to her system, talk about opening the floodgates of potential problems. Now it's her school computer. She doesn't do her home finances and stuff. But nonetheless, it can happen so quickly if you're not aware. Okay. So the email phishing is what I'm trying to get at, and you have to be aware. And we just had an incident recently. Our landlord for our office down in the valley. There are entities who are trying to spoof companies that you may deal with. They change just ever so much, a little bit of the website. And an example that David gave from Dollar Bank was saying, if they have a W in the name, but they put two V's, if you just look at it quickly, you might not notice the difference, okay? You have to be aware when you receive something, it's best not to click on things on your emails, but to open a new tab or open a new window and go to those sites independently. Okay, so if you get an email from PNC Bank or Dollar Bank or Citizens and they're asking you to click on this link to do some verification, don't, okay? It's an easy way to mess things up. I have dumpster diving here, which is a very simple thing. We love it in law enforcement, but the bad guys do too. Be very careful when you're throwing things away. If you don't have a shredder, and not just a shredder that does the ribbons like in Argo, the movie when they recreated the pictures of the embassy workers. You want a crisscross. You want something that's going to make confetti, okay? You want something that's also going to be able to shred a CD or a DVD in your credit cards, okay? So it just doesn't take much. It's not a lot of money. Shred the stuff you don't need. Don't just throw things in the garbage. Because if people know, and yes, it's a roll of the dice, and what are the odds someone's going to find your garbage that has something of value in it, but it just takes that one time to really make things uncomfortable and difficult for you. We solve cases dumping in or jumping into people's garbage. It doesn't always work out though, but not bad. Shoulder surfing. You see the ads on TV. They're using drones. They're overlooking over your shoulder to capture your credit card or when you're doing something online. If you go, or you see people, not necessarily you, but if you see people go into a Panera's, they have free Wi-Fi. They sit there with their computers. A lot of people don't have traditional offices, will do business out of Panera's all day long. There are people who can also be sitting there who are simply sniffing the airwaves, shall we say, for what you're putting out there on the Wi-Fi. They may be able to read right back at you. It is also not beyond the realm of possibilities that they have their own hotspot. A hotspot, for clarification, is your own internet access no matter where you're at. It's essentially a cell phone, but it is just your data connection, your data point to connect to the internet. So if someone goes in and they spend the money for the hotspot and they name it such that when you go to Panera's and you see a free Wi-Fi and you don't even think twice about it, you're now going through them and they can be monitoring everything that you're doing. If you do any banking, you start looking at your email, they can capture anything that you're doing online. It's not so anonymous. It's not like going to the library and sitting in a chair and reading a magazine. Okay. The other is,
I'm guessing you don't want to do that sort of stuff.
it is not the place. At Panera's, get your coffee, have a meal, look at the news. Don't be looking at your credit card activity, your banking activity. Don't even look at your email. It's just not worth it, okay? And the same with your phone calls. Understand that someone can be listening to what you're doing. If you see something and you're not going to say, well, I'm going to be smart, I'm not going to get online and make this purchase, I'm just going to do it over the phone real quick. You're giving away that information, but even to anybody who doesn't have the equipment. It is amazing how well the bad guy is, or how skilled they are to remember to capture your information. You think it's hard to remember a phone number. They're going to remember your credit card information, your expiration date, your CVV code, your name. Maybe your zip code if you get it, and that's what they ask for on the other end. So we tell people, even if you have to at that moment for whatever reason, go out to your car, find that cone of silence, as I call it, and get away from the crowd. Have that private conversation, and then come back in. But really, I mean, how desperately do you need to make that purchase? How desperately do you need to provide that on there? Pretext calls. This is kind of along the lines of what I was saying earlier. If a call comes to you, be very guarded. Anybody see the movie with identity theft? That movie, the whole pretext of that movie is that the lady, the main character from Mike and Molly, calls the gentleman who becomes the other main character but the victim and says, we're with such and such credit protection company. We just want you to know we stopped a significant level of compromise on one of your bank cards. We did this for free. However, we are offering protection for your other credit instruments that you have. And for one time for only, $10 for the year, let's say, as an introductory. And she goes and asks him for his social security number, his name, his date of birth, his credit card numbers, etc. Then she goes and duplicates all this stuff and has a ball. That's all she's doing, okay? As simple, as silly as it is, and it's a fun movie to watch, it happens. Almost just like that. Be aware of the incoming calls. Try to be the one doing the outgoing, okay? Friends and family. Let's just talk about the family. You can't pick family. And family can mess you up as bad as a stranger can. You have to be aware of the things you have control over and the things that you don't. And that's really what's going to differentiate a lot of the recommendations that we make. If you've got family and you got a family member being a knucklehead, it ain't going to change. Just be aware of it. That can compromise your situation just as much as anything else. The other is I'll touch on, because it's happening more and more, is what we call the love connection. Okay, people who go out to the websites to find companionship at any stage of life, and they hook up with somebody, but they never meet them in person. They're always only online. It's only through phone calls. Tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars can be lost in these relationships. And we have very skilled individuals on that other end of the line, the bad guys, who can pull on those heartstrings and in one way, shape, or form, before people know it, they're sending money. And they buy into this. And as I've told my kids, especially when they're going away to college, lust will beat logic every time, okay? There is no age at which that does not apply, okay? Just be aware. So what are the things you can do to try to minimize this, the identity theft activity that we're facing, okay? I just said it. Understand the things you can control and the things that you cannot. So you focus on those things that you can. One is on the internet, at home. I highly endorse using antivirus, firewalling, any kind of that software to help minimize your exposure. It's not going to prevent 100%. You're trying to minimize. The antivirus, the anti-spyware, to scan your systems regularly. It doesn't do any good to have it if you never use it also. Let it. Sometimes it's a pain in the butt because it bogs down your system, but do your scans, do your updates. Be very much aware. Those updates that Microsoft pushes down, very necessary. You don't want, look at what just happened on the news in the last 24 hours. So the FBI is battling Apple, okay? Big controversy as to whether or not, where's the degree of security versus national versus personal privacy, et cetera. Somebody finds a kink in Apple's operating system or software, such that the Bureau may be able to get into the Apple phone without Apple, okay? So Apple's trying to sell their product as the ultimate personal security for their customers. What do you think they're going to do once they hear this news, and if this is successful? They're going to fix that hole, okay? And Apple is very good at pushing down those updates to their software. It's a very necessary thing. It's going to happen. We know it's going to happen, okay? Same with your Microsoft or Mac machines. If there's a software update, let your system do those updates, okay? Don't block them because it's inconvenient. Your password security. I'm a huge fan, of course, everybody is, on strong passwords. But how many passwords can we really remember? And we get nailed with them, burdened with them, shall we say, all the time at work, okay? When it comes to the home stuff, you still need to have a long and worthwhile password. The problem, though, is how many people use the same password for all of their accounts, be it Facebook, email, credit card or banking online, etc. Okay, so what I try to open the idea to, and then you decide your own algorithm, we'll call it, okay, is if you're going to go to Dollar Bank, www.dollarbank.com, right? Two things with regard to this before I forget. HTTP, often you'll see at the beginning of an address, or HTTPS. S is a more secure, encrypted connection that you end up with. When you're dealing with anything on credit cards, banking, etc., look for that S. HTTPS, couple slashes, www.dollarbank. You should see that. They're all going to be using it, okay? And already the other one's gone. Just like that. No, 33. So it'll come to me. Oh, no, That was close. Okay. So on the password side, okay, you're at Dollar Bank. Let your password, so I say use your same password that you have for everything, whatever that may be, because you know it. That's your standard, okay? But for each site, you can modify it so that it applies across the board. Dollar Bank, you have, let's say, take the first 4 letters of your website, DOLL. Let's say you put those all in caps. Put your standard password you use for everything else. And at the end of it, add something at the end, maybe the first 3 letters, DOL, maybe in lowercase. So that you've accomplished a couple things. And this may have been what I was trying to remember before. You need a long password. You need at least 12. And if you can go longer, it's a better way to go, all right? But not just regular words. You need to have upper and lowercase. You need to have numbers. You need to have special characters. Those 4 aspects intermixed in a password makes it very, very strong, okay? The longer it is, exponentially, the harder it is for the bad guy to break. So in my example, let's say you just had a very simple password where it was your initials and your date of birth for you and your wife. Very common situation. Separate those, throw in a special character, in whichever way you're going to do it, but that's your normal. So you have DOLL uppercase, plug in your standard, at the very end do DOL in lowercase, or DOLL in lowercase at the end. Is it sophisticated? Absolutely not. Is it easy to remember no matter what website you're going to go to? Yes. Is it a different password for every site? Yes. It's just an example. Modify it. The longer the better. And 12 or better characters is what they're pushing now. Account reconciliations. So as much as I don't think I'm your typical accountant and obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, right? I am, okay? I record every paper dollar I spend, every credit card transaction I make. I use Microsoft Money, they have Quicken, there's any number of these, right? I do it for a couple different reasons. One is, I want to know where my money's going. I can create budgets based on past activity, very easy to do. So that's the anal side of me trying to keep track of my money. The other is this. I reconcile my bank accounts, my credit card accounts, every month. Reconciliations are absolutely critical to staying not ahead, but minimizing the lead time the bad guy has to use your financial instruments, okay? They're absolutely essential to do. I can't tell you how it kills me when my kids simply look at the statement, it's about what they expected. Really? Okay. Here's the other thing. Some credit cards, you can actually do that, look at that, and know in an instant if you've got a fraudulent charge. It doesn't work for all of them though, but take a credit card that's used just to buy gas. Okay, like you got a Sheetz credit card, they're paying you 4% back on every purchase. Way to go. Every time you get gas, end on the same penny. 4 cents. You can look down your charges, they're all 4s, they're all yours. You look down the line, you see something other than a 4, might not be you. Easy thing to do if you're not going to be doing reconciliations. You can't do that across the board with all your cards. But as an example, things where you have control, things that you can do, not a bad thing. I talked about shredding. Talked about the secure websites. There is a product, conveniently Dollar Bank is here, so I keep throwing them out as an example. They offer their customers, as do many sites, free software called Trusteer. Trust, E-E-R. Free to download, and what it does is it compares the website you're connected to a known secure or safe site. So if you go to a site and it's not on in their database as good, you're going to get a red bar across the top. That's a warning. If you're connected to their site, you're going to get a green bar, or any other bank account or any other website that's a known entity. You get a green bar. You have trust that you're connected securely, encrypted or otherwise, at a good location versus a phished location. Email security attachments, it kind of goes along the lines of don't click on things within the emails, go on the outside to look for your what you're looking for. Social media, be very much aware. You're a mature crowd compared to me going to high school or junior high to talk, where they put everything out there in different sites that change or different software that they use all the time. When I say they put it out there, so when I work crimes against children, that's a polite way of saying I work child pornography. 80% of my time is spent doing that. This is a nice break. Okay? Kids put everything out there. Adults do too, though, and you've got to be very much aware. How often do you see someone, if you're on Facebook, they're at dinner in Orlando, Florida, let's say, and they just do a snapshot because your phone captures the geodata, it's tagged into the image, whatever. You realize you're telling everybody you're not at home. And they have, they sell the doorbells, have the video camera to them, and you can, great, to a point, okay? They're not a safety net for all problems that might occur. Social media is the same thing. Be aware of what you put out there. Even for your identity, don't put your date of birth. If you go on there and it says, hey, happy birthday, it's so-and-so, everybody's going to know, and especially, hey, you turned 50. Now they know exactly when your date of birth is. If you're trying to be funky and only give your day, be very much aware. Travel. I was telling the gentleman again, I traveled internationally recently, and he mentioned this about the credit cards at the restaurants here. You put your credit card in a thing, they take it away, you don't know what they do, they come back, you got your bill. Interestingly, so I was in London and Cyprus, literally I flew on Monday night, I was back Friday afternoon, okay? Every food purchase, I took only 2 credit cards and they were chip enabled, etc. They did all the charges at the table. If we gave them the card thinking they were going to take them, they left the cards, came back with the handheld device, did it right there. I really respected, appreciated that. And he talked about going to the chips here. What's interesting is how many of you tried to use the chip, but their machines are not accepting them right now. Very frustrating because the whole point is to try to make it more secure. Someone had asked the question previously, if you're going to, well,
Chip card wouldn't work.
it's probably the device versus your card, to be honest with you.
Right.
Yeah.
So they use the card subsequently, but I couldn't figure out why they couldn't get the
Right.
transaction to work.
Well, and
They didn't have the push in, it was in the slide.
yeah, and that is the most common. They have not activated the machines like we would like to see. And this whole conversion in October 2015 is a shift in liability. It's exactly what it is. But the credit companies are trying to shift it onto whoever's accepting your point of sale transaction. Where they've been very forgiving in the past, they're not going to be now. Because it used to be a cost of doing business as to what % they would lose each year. They accepted it, but now it's like this is getting out of hand. And now that's this whole shift to burden. But I loved it over in Europe. Now they are way ahead of us in terms of this type of security. We are the ones who are lax. Which also brings up this credit card issue. How many credit cards do you need in your wallet at any given time? You're right, 2. Well, 1 or 2, but seriously, not the George Costanza wallet that's got 16 credit cards, etc. Okay, but we do that. Part of us feels good. The whole FICO score, which is a very irritating thing to me, but it's based on your ability to handle your debt. If you have no debt, you actually have a worse score. They want you to do this, and I think it's so counterproductive. But truly limit what you carry. When I went overseas, or you go on vacation, whatever you're doing, limit yourself to maybe the 2 cards. Know which ones you have in your wallet. Hopefully they're going to be the chip enabled. There's enough credit out there that you likely, if you're going to travel internationally, only take the chip card and be aware of the ones that charge transaction fees that don't. Yes, sir.
Call your card servicer and let them know
Exactly.
where you're going.
And that was my next comment, is let them know where you are, how long you're going to be there. They may or may not take down details. And I forgot, right? So I'm in London airport, on my way to Cyprus. I call the credit card company. They have a toll-free international number on the back. They just put Europe. Okay, so you're going to be in Europe. So we'll just put in Europe, and you'll be back on Friday. Versus I'm going to be in London, or I'm only going to be in Cyprus, etc. Okay, but you let them know. If you're going to be on a cruise, all the more important to let them know, because if you go in your first stop and use your credit card, and you go to the next stop, hundreds of miles away the next day, you might be denied. Makes that souvenir shopping kind of shortened up a little bit, you know? All right, let me switch over. I apologize here. Credit reporting, okay? Aside from we got this book here. Your credit reporting services, absolutely critical that you check your credit multiple times a year, not just the one time. You get one free credit report a year from each of the 3 agencies, okay? If you go to the website, ftc.gov, they talk about this free credit report, and it's not freecreditreport.com. It is annualcreditreport.com. Let me double check. Annualcreditreport.com, all right? Even I forget, but if you go to the website, ftc.gov, they will point you to that link to check your credit. So here's the thing, though. You get 3 free checks from the different credit companies, but 1 per year. So check it once every 4 months, rotating what companies you're getting that credit report from. And they will be slightly different each time, okay?
How do you know that you're actually talking, when you do it online, how do you know that you're actually getting to that credit card company and you're not getting
Okay.
to some?
So the question, how do you know you're getting to the credit card company? You're actually not getting to the credit card company. You meant the credit company?
Yes.
Yes. Well, you're going through the links on FTC. I'm sorry. Oh, so let's say you start with ftc.gov. You see where it says annualcreditreport.com. See, I don't want to mess up. It's your free credit report, but you go to annualcreditreport.com. You get to choose which credit company you're going to select your free report from. You could do all 3 at one time. I don't recommend that because you have to wait a year before you get to see it again for free. You can buy a subscription from them, check it as often as you want. But even just checking it those 3 times a year, you're way ahead of the game, okay? You'll get the report, you download it, you can take a look at it, you'll see what you have, you'll see your history, it's interesting what they each have. But you monitor. The other thing you can do is this. You can, if you are comfortable where you are in life, let's say, you're not going to be buying a car, you have no need for new credit cards, things are good. You can call the different credit reporting companies and put a freeze on your credit. In Pennsylvania, it's $10 per credit company that you do this to, plus tax. And no credit can be given. You can unfreeze it for another $10 and 60 cents in tax, depending on what county you're living in. Get your credit and then lock it down again. A little bit of an inconvenience, absolutely, but what are we trying to do? We're trying to prevent anybody from profiting from us as individuals, right? Here's where it becomes of real value if you have kids, okay? Kids are virgin credit. They don't have it. You wouldn't even think about checking it till maybe they go away to college. And by then, they may have a credit history you knew nothing about, okay? Pay the $10 to each of the companies, lock down your kid's credit, and it can't be started at all until you unlock it. Now, I didn't think about that. I had to give that to somebody else who, when I gave one of these presentations, said, well, couldn't you do that with your kids? I thought it was brilliant. $30, you lock them down, you've just bought credit insurance for how many years? Until they need it. Or grandkids, right? What am I missing? Oh, if anybody is doing a service, military service, and they get called for duty, they will do a free lock on the credit while they're doing that active duty process. The book will tell you, and again, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. The book has the information. Really take a look at it. If you have questions, I have no problem giving you my name and number. If you want to write it down, you can send me an email if you'd like. In fact, I'll do that right now, just briefly if you want. It is my name, Patrick Howley, Howley. It's Patrick Howley, Howley, at ic.fbi.gov. ic.fbi.gov. .fbi.gov. Okay.
Annual credit report.gov or .com? Is it annual credit report.gov or
That is a really good question. Annualcreditreport.com. It's on the ftc.gov website. Okay. Patrick.Howley. Yes. Lots of dots. Lots of dots.
I have a question actually about
Yes.
shredding. I shred like bank things, important things like that that come in. But what about the junk mail you get that has your address on it? Is that like, should that be shredded?
So with regards to the question being for shredding of solicitations, mail, advertisements you get at home, you should. I will be honest, I'm often just lazy. I tear them in half just to do that. But if anyone's dumpster diving, they could make the phone call, they could try to activate. Hopefully they don't have my secret codes, shall we say.
Usually on that kind of stuff, I tear out the address page, shred that.
Yes, so you don't have to shred everything.
The rest of it becomes false.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. So if you just shred like the critical pieces of information. But the shredding is the easy thing to do. As it relates to that, though, we often have those security questions that people want to ask. And the common one is like, what's your mother's maiden name? Okay? The hard part when you start messing with things is you got to remember what you're messing with, right? But don't use your mother's real maiden name. Kumquat, grapefruit, trigger, the horse. It's whatever answer you give is the one that they're going to compare to in their system. So you don't, I'm often when I'm doing those, I'm trying to think, well, who doesn't know what these things are? And it's like I have to remind myself, I don't have to give the right answer. You just got to know what answer you're given and stick with it. Be aware. Any other? I'll answer any kind of questions anybody have.
Like these companies like Karma, where they
Right.
tell you can have, free credit reports all the time and things like that.
So in regards to what is free, I just don't believe that anything is free. There's going to be a catch. There's going to be a service they might try to pitch you, okay? When you're getting it, you are going to give them something, even if it's just that they're going to send you solicitations later down the road, okay? If you have, many companies give it to you for free anyhow. If you have Discover as a credit card, you get your FICO score on every bill. And it's interesting how that needle kind of like hovers, whatever. But you don't have to pay. You don't. There's enough out there. I'm not a fan of, because I think there's something going on when it's Credit Karma or freecreditreport.com, as catchy as those commercials can be, and you like the jingles, etc. It's a business. Even your credit company, even Experian, Equifax, TransUnion, those companies are for-profit entities. And that's an industry that was created because of the credit card activity. And they start accumulating the information. What do they do with your information? They sell your information, okay? That's what they exist for. So it's kind of like, this is what we're stuck dealing with. And there's products that we use which are spin-offs of credit report companies and what they create. So, they're there. You're going to know who you're dealing with. But they are a necessary step these days. Sir?
Solicitations that come in the mail. I don't shred everything. Sometimes like the credit applications that the pre-approved, I shred those.
Right.
My thought is always, couldn't they just take them out of my mailbox if they wanted them that badly?
Absolutely. Here's the thing, though. If we get to that credit freezing, you can also tell the credit companies you're not interested in any more solicitations as well, because you're getting those because they're being purchased in bulk from the credit reporting companies. Who's meeting the criteria that they set, whether it's in a zip code, whether it's an income bracket, whether it's whatever it may be, okay? That's how you're being targeted for these products. You can just, it's kind of like the do not call, like the do not solicit. May not work for everything, but it should cover most of what you're looking for. Sir.
What percentage of these hackers and
Oh, was that your question?
I'm gonna ask that question again.
All right.
And what are their penalties?
All right, so I'm not going to have a great answer on the question, how many of the bad guys, how many of the hackers, how many of the skimmers are we actually catching? How many of the mosquitoes in your backyard are you killing when you're out there on a summer's evening, okay? They're out there. And I like the analogy of the mosquitoes because they're bloodsuckers, and then they're out there. We are battling them all the time. The sad reality, and it's why I promote these books as much as I do for everybody, is you're going to be sorely disappointed when you call law enforcement to report you got a problem. Because you are going to be your own investigator. You're going to be the one that has to do the work. I'm stuck in the office, either doing most of what I do, or if I get a call that someone has lost money, it better be a boatload of money that I'm going to be able to spend time to help you with. Otherwise, I'm going to direct you to things that you need to do, and I'm going to hope that you can minimize your damage with the credit company or with, however the money was taken, okay? Because unfortunately, there's only so many of us to go around. There's only so much work we can do, and we're looking at high thresholds in dollar amounts. It's getting to the point that if it's not a $100,000 loss, and that's a low number, we may not be able to. So when we direct people, but you have to still contact law enforcement because the credit reporting company is going to want a police report. So you're going to make that initial, It's almost as if, how many have been in an accident and you call the police and they say, if nobody was hurt, come to the station to file the report. This is the equivalent on the financial side. So are we catching them? Absolutely, okay?
What kind of penalties do they get?
It
Slap on the
depends.
back of the hand, or do they?
The
do they
penalties
get-
vary. So what do the guys get in terms of? In Cyprus, I was in Cyprus to pick up a guy who got caught because he stole $3 million, let's say. He's coming back. He's going to face his time. And he's probably, depending on what he does to cooperate, there's so many variables as to what they get. It is not going to be pleasant for them. Is it going to be enough relative to you being the victim? Are you going to be satisfied? Oh, probably not. But they're going to do several years in prison, okay? When it comes to the local stuff, well, and see, here's the thing. You may feel it's a slap on the wrist. We are constantly battling what is a fair sentence for the crime that's involved. And if it's handled locally versus handled by the state versus handled by federally, it runs the gamut, right? People generally they don't want to get caught up in the federal system because we don't have early release. There is no early parole, okay? You have to do 85% of your time. In the state system, you have to do the minimum. You always see a sentence. It's like 10 to 20 years. Well, they have to do 10. They may have to do 20, but they're eligible after half their time. Okay, so that's what those things mean. Locally, again, it depends. What their burden is, what the jail population is like, how, there's so many things that come into play. My daughter's credit card was compromised like 2-3 months ago. I got notified, we stopped the bloodletting, but it was $750 had already been charged in a day of shopping at the mall. Is anything going to happen to that person? I have no idea because I'm not going to investigate it. No one's contacted me to investigate it. I gave it to Discover. Is Discover going to shoot it out to the mall or shoot it out to the local PD there? Because everything's caught on surveillance. It's just a matter of how quickly can you get to it, et cetera. There's so many things that come into play. It's not going to satisfy you because you're not doing anything wrong, but you're being victimized. And we want people to pay when we're being victimized. But it's very difficult. It's a huge issue. They try to control it. They try to make it more difficult. We spend more time on the true big hackers, like taking down the Silk Roads and taking down the guy in Cyprus who got $3 million in one transaction. Okay, how about the Bank of Shanghai losing $100 million in a set of transactions? And the only reason it stopped was because someone noticed a spelling error But they were going for $1 billion to be stolen, all electronically. Huge, huge. So I apologize not having a good answer for you, but I mean, it's statistically, it's very unfortunate. Yes, ma'am.
My question is, when you talk about the punishment, who changes the law so that the punishment can be, greater than what people are getting, whether it's city, state, or federal?
Well, it's always going to be the legislature for that. The state is going to dictate. So I kind of, when I said local to state, locally is the magistrate's going to decide what the punishment, but they're going to follow kind of what the state sets it. It's only a matter of what level of court we go to in the state system. But either the state legislature or the federal legislature sets sentencing guidelines, okay? Keep in mind and try to understand, we just went through a period of time where certain sentences were all reduced because they said it was too, almost as if it was targeting. But when we do our investigations, it's not a, we don't go in knowing who's doing it. I guess we kind of have to kind of look at it that way. I will tell you there is a huge disparity between certain of violations that get a lot of mandatory time and the white-collar times that aren't mandatory. And it seems like a lot of money can be taken with not a huge penalty. I was talking to a gentleman out in the hallway earlier this evening on mortgage fraud. Mortgage fraud is a huge dollar number, but people were only getting like 7, 10, 15 years maybe. Well, we're talking like $100 million potentially. I think they are truly trying to address it, but it is a very difficult thing to get changed because it's, I don't know, they have this scoring system.
Can it be done in the ballot box?
Everything can be done in the ballot box, but if they're going to pay attention to that very specific issue, with all the other issues we have going on, it is tough. But it's a great way to start. It really is. And I'm all for the white collar side being far harsher. It is very different. All right, sir.
The equipment that we've been shown so far is an interceptor type, sometime between when you initiate and it gets to the machine or whatever. How soon would a telephone be that, an interceptor unit? Where you can get in ahead of, between when you start the call and it's supposed to get to the bank, can it be intercepted somewhere in the middle?
I would tell you be highly unlikely. Now, let's go back 20 years when you had cordless phones, which are pulling out the antenna, it's going to a base, and the base is going, back to your phone. That could be intercepted with scanners, etc. Your phones now are digital. They're encrypted. You're not going to have that. When we, as law enforcement, get a Title III, which means we're doing a phone tap into a system, it is incredible how hard it is for the phone company to get it right to allow us to be able to listen. It is because some phones are more difficult than others for them to do it to. So I believe that your communications from your phone to the cell tower, etc., are not likely to be intercepted. The NSA is not your typical hacker.
Is that why they're trying to do away with landlines?
People do, no, I think that the landlines are going away because people are so used to carrying the device in their pocket, they don't want to pay twice, and they have their phones at home. They don't charge you anymore for the most part, for your minutes, for your texting, etc. But now you're becoming glued to the hip or to the ear, and with smartphones.
Yeah,
So
they're increasingly going to be vulnerable though.
well, but see, here's where it seems to go, right? We evolve with technology, and we love the technology because it makes things easier, we do things faster, we get more things done. We've done things in a shorter period of time. Then we start having all these problems. So then what do we want to do? We don't want to use the ATM, we want to go into the bank and go to the teller to get our cash. We don't want to use the credit card so much because someone's going to skim it, someone's going to hack it, and we're going to start using cash. We're trying to keep our credit in line. We don't want to live on the credit card. You start regressing. You now don't want to go on. we're paying bills. I do all my banking online. I will tell you I pay all my bills online as much as I can. But I feel confident and I've never had an issue. Again, it's a matter of time, right? I may end up going back to writing checks and mailing them. The problem is there is always a weakness in every system, and it's a matter of what can you control, what can't you. And a lot of things happen because there's somebody on the receiving end of your paper who's going to record your information and compromise you anyhow. So you decide what your comfort level is, and that's where you end up. Why do you think Ted Kaczynski lived in a shed out in the he had it. All right. Well, I thank you very much. I encourage, if you have questions after, look at some of the material, take it, order it for free. Don't sell it. Thank you.
I'll make this quick. I just want to.
Does anybody need the email again? It was better than giving out my cell phone.
Okay. Well, if you need it, just contact us and we'll get it to you as well. I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight and spending your time with us, and everyone who tuned in. And thank you to Patrick and David for being here, taking time out of your schedule. And this will be on our website, so if you want to refer back to anything, it'll probably be about a week or so before we get it up, but it'll be there for you. And like I said, I've been planning a lot of these seminars. Our next one will be the end of April, April 26th at Penn Brewery. It's going to be a tasting, similar to our investment speed dating, but this is the fundamentals of investing. So we'll be talking mortgages, alternative investments, variable annuities, insurance. So if you or anyone you know is interested, please come. It's a free event, and hopefully learn a little bit more about investments, and we can answer some questions for you. So thank you. And I don't know, David. Okay.
Make sure everybody fills in their evaluation
Yes.
form. Those are online. Please email us. Let us know what you think of our events. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.